You know, we're surrounded by buildings every single day, but have you ever stopped to think about what happens when they come down? Or even just how much waste is created when they go up? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the massive, and I mean massive, world of construction waste. And we're going to uncover a huge opportunity that's hiding in plain sight.
So when we talk about waste, this is the kind of scale we're dealing with. Just look at that. Every renovation, every demolition, every brand new building contributes to literal mountains of material, like this one. It's a pretty shocking picture, right? But believe it or not, the numbers behind it are even crazier.
40%. Just let that number sink in for a second. It's huge, and it tells you something really important about the footprint of the entire construction industry. Yep, that's what it means. 40% of all the wood, metal, minerals, you name it, that we pull out of the ground goes into our buildings. That is an incredible amount of consumption. So the big question is, what are we doing with all that stuff when a building gets old? Well, for a long, long time, the answer has been pretty simple and incredibly wasteful. It's basically a one-way street to a dead end. Let's take a look at the old model. This right here. This is the linear economy in a nutshell. We take resources from the earth, we make something with them, we use it for a while, and then we throw it away. It becomes residual waste. There's no circle, no second life. It's a dead end that goes straight to the landfill. But here's the kicker. This is the really hopeful part. Unlike a lot of other trash, the vast majority of what's in that giant construction pile isn't really waste at all. It's actually a treasure trove of valuable resources, just waiting for a new purpose. The potential here is absolutely enormous. Of course, it's not quite as simple as just grabbing things out of the pile. This is a great way to see how complex it really is. Over on the left, you've got your high-value stuff, like metals, that are pretty easy to recycle. But as you move over to the right, things get trickier. You've got treated wood, plastics, all sorts of mixed materials that are way harder to keep out of the landfill. And that's the challenge we've got to solve. So that brings us to the really exciting stuff. Innovators are coming up with these incredible new ways to unlock all the value that's trapped in this so-called waste. They're turning a huge environmental problem into a seriously powerful solution. Okay, let's start with a real game changer, biochar. The easiest way to think of it is like a kind of supercharged, high-tech charcoal. You make it by taking organic waste, like all that wood from construction sites, and you heat it up in an environment with very little oxygen. This process is called pyrolysis, and it basically transforms the wood, locking its carbon into this incredibly stable, rich form. Here's basically how it works. Step 1, you gather up the biomass. Wastewood is a perfect feedstock for this. Then you cook it in a special low-oxygen chamber. And what comes out the other end? A material that doesn't just prevent emissions, it actually locks away carbon for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. It's a form of carbon removal. And this is why biochar is so cool. It is not a one-trick pony. The biggest benefit, of course, is that it sequesters carbon long-term. That's a massive win for the climate. But then it does so much more. You can add it to soil to make farms more fertile. You can mix it into concrete or asphalt to make them better. You can even use it to filter pollutants out of water. It's a true multi-tool technology. But the applications don't stop there. It's moving from our farms and into our factories, and it's helping to tackle some of the toughest industries to decarbonize. So let's take steel production, for example. Traditionally, making steel requires a ton of metallurgical coal, which is a fossil fuel. But check out the circular method on the right. Companies like Stelco in Canada are actually replacing some of that coal with biocarbon made from old treated railway ties. I mean, how smart is that? They're taking waste from one industry and using it to slash emissions in another. And we're not talking about a small-scale experiment here. Just this one project diverts an incredible amount of waste from landfills every single year. 20,000 metric tons. That's how much wood waste is kept out of the ground every year from just this one single partnership. It is a perfect real-world example of circular thinking creating a total win-win. You get less waste and you use less fossil fuel. Okay, so we've seen how we can transform the materials that end up in the waste pile, but what if we could change the whole process so we don't end up with a messy, mixed-up pile to begin with? Well, that requires a really fundamental shift in thinking, from demolition to deconstruction. So what is the actual difference between demolition and deconstruction? Demolition is what we're all used to seeing, right? A wrecking ball, a big excavator, just smashing a building into rubble. It's fast, sure,
but you lose almost all the value of the materials inside. Deconstruction, on the other hand, is more like surgery. It's the careful, selective dismantling of a building piece by piece to save its components. And the difference is just night and day. You can recover up to 90% of the materials, you keep their value high, and you create way more local jobs in the process.
A really great way to think about it is urban mining. Instead of digging into the earth for new stuff, we're literally mining our own cities. We're recovering these beautiful old-growth wood beams, hardwood floors, unique light fixtures, materials that often have way more character and quality than anything you could buy new today. So, when you start putting all these different pieces together, transforming the materials and completely redesigning the processes, you can really start to see a clear path forward, a path to a truly circular future for how we build. So what does that path actually look like? Well, first, it starts with a change in mindset. You have to see waste not as a problem to be buried, but as a resource to be used. Second, you embrace amazing technologies like biochar to turn low-value stuff into high-value products that store carbon. Third, you redesign how buildings come down, choosing that surgical deconstruction over brute force demolition. And finally, you have to build the infrastructure to support it all. Things like centralized reuse hubs, these rehome depots, to make it easy for everyone to participate. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to end on. We're always looking for the next big thing, the next high-tech material that's going to save us. But what if the most sustainable, the most valuable, and maybe even the most innovative building materials of our future are already here, waiting to be rediscovered in the buildings all around us?